Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Analyst Angle combined with a Zcast. I'm Bob Laliberte, Principal Analyst at theCUBE Research, and I'm joined by Zeus Kerravala, Founder and Principal Analyst of ZK Research. Welcome, Zeus.
Hey, Bob, how you been?
Doing all right. It's been a fun summer, a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and as usual, some of the big topics in IT tend to revolve around some of the Magic Quadrants that come out and the placement of the companies on that quadrant. And I think this year's, I think it's their wired and wireless LAN Magic Quadrant has certainly caused a little bit of controversy, a little bit of questioning of things, some affirmations of things as well. So I thought maybe we'd spend some time talking about that quadrant. And then if we do have time, maybe some of the other ones that have come out as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and by the way, for all you haters out there, I appreciate you looking at my LinkedIn post and criticizing me because I'm up to almost 50,000 views in that post. So
right, there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, this is, when you think about the Magic Quadrant, I mean, it's just an indelible part of the IT landscape, right? People have been using it for years. You yourself, when you were in IT, used it to look at how things were.
Yeah, no, certainly. And there's a lot of different opinions as to how you should use the report. When I was in corporate IT, I used it more as a shortlist tool. I didn't really care as much where the vendors were placed. I just wanted to know who was in the space. I do know a lot of IT pros, they'll send RFPs out only to the people in the leaders quadrant. And so I think where you place is a bit overrated, but I do understand why the vendors are concerned. And so there's always a lot of, I guess, angst about which quadrant you're in. And even if you're in the leader quadrant, how top to the right are you? Right. And well, for whatever reason, we've come to understand that more up, more right is better.
Anytime you're in the upper right-hand corner, you're doing well.
Yeah.
Unless you want to get bought, and then the lower right-hand
yes,
being to the spot for you if you want to buy.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's an interesting discussion. And so certainly the people who were in the leaders quadrant this year, a lot of them well-deserved, right?
Sure.
So Juniper has just been going great guns in this space with Mist, the extensibility of the platform, being able to deliver value. We've talked to so many of their customers, right? So that's not really surprising. Some of the others that are up in there, Fortinet, right? Not surprising. HPE, Aruba, right? Again, this is a space that they've played, all the Airheads and so forth, played a long time in. I think some of the more interesting things were the moves where they took companies out of that leader quadrant, like a Cisco, like Extreme, et cetera. So maybe we should discuss that for a second.
Yeah, the one leader that I question though is Huawei, and I don't. It's the MQ is interesting in that they have all this really granular criteria about how much business you have to have in every region of the globe, number of customers, things like that, and Huawei ranks top half in vision. I've never really known Huawei to be a visionary for anything. They're very good fast follower, right?
Correct.
Don't get me wrong. They tend to take products and make them commodity, but they've been banned from the United States region.
Yeah.
So I mean, almost by Gartner's own definition, I'm not sure how you can even include them in the quadrant, but let's say you do.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you just Google Huawei and bribery, you get all these stories about them getting booted out of African countries now. And I know Cisco's jumped all over that, trying to grab some of that business back, where they've illegally routed people money. So if you're bribing people, you're not innovating, and you're banned from certain countries, I don't know how you can be a leader.
Yeah, no, and I think certainly a lot of people, like you said, even when they're self-selecting and using this as a guide for who they send out RFPs to, in the U.S. anyways, North America, that's automatically excluded. So it's sort of maybe a gratuitous placement, because everyone, at least in North America, isn't going to most likely send them an RFP.
Yeah, and that's true. But I don't, like I said, I don't remember the last innovative thing they've done where they've led the market, right? So we give them that highest score. The other, when I look at Cisco and Extreme being removed from the quadrant, I question that only in that they were leaders in last year's quadrant.
Yeah.
They've made a lot of advancement in product this year.
Yeah.
So I could have, if Gartner had some reason, with Cisco, a lot of it had to do with lack of integration with Meraki Catalyst. That was a bigger issue last year, 2 years ago, than it is this year. So I don't know how you go from being a leader last year, advance your integration work, and then get kicked out of the leader quadrant. The big issue I see with this report though, Bob, is that it's a static report that is supposed to live for a year in a market that's fast moving. The vendor cutoff date for submission is for product availability is December 31st. We've had HP Discover, Cisco Live, Extreme had their Connect event.
Yep.
They announced a lot of product, and then you release the report after the events. So if I'm not really following the space all that closely, and I'm hoping you IT pros that there are, I'm not going to be aware of all the announcements made. And I think it's unfair to issue a report in June from December data after all the vendors have had their events.
Well, it certainly does bring up that it's a question for Gartner about ensuring the relevance of a quadrant like this, right? Especially as we've seen AI having such an impact on the productivity and development cycles.
Yes.
And how fast things are accelerating. When we talk to Cisco Live, for example, 24 separate technology innovation announcements at that event. And they don't seem to be slowing down at all, right? They've only been picking up speed as they went through the fall. And you hear talks about them talking about the developers. They're not clicking at the keyboard. They're talking to their machine as they develop. And they're talking about how much faster things are and how energized the culture is there from a development perspective. So the big question is, if you're looking at this, yes, they are venerable tools that have been around for a long time, but how do you balance that against the fact that there's going to be 3 or 4 announcements per year? And so if you're trying to make decisions, while looking back is obviously a great indicator of where people were and what they're doing, also factoring in that roadmap has to be a huge part of that. And that's the one thing these quadrants lack. It's kind of like when you give your financial guidance. Here's what I did last quarter,
yes,
and here's my guidance going forward. So maybe it's time for these quadrants to start having it, here's based on, and then click this button to see based on roadmap or future guidance.
That's an excellent analogy, because an equity analyst doesn't set their price target in June based on December data and say that's going to leave my price target this way for all year. Every time there's an announcement, they will issue an updated report, right?
Yeah.
An updated price target. Now, while I feel for Tim and Mike, they're really good analysts, right?
Yeah.
I think Gartner needs to relook at this process. It's an electronic document, and work done off spreadsheets and things like that. I don't understand why the vendors can't self-update and have the document refresh itself at least once a quarter, like you do with earnings notes and things like that.
Right? Make it more of a tracker than a quadrant. And or like I said, it's like I said, it's highly valuable tool, and it's how do you make it more valuable considering the fact that innovation is accelerated so much, and microservices, people don't do quarterly drops anymore, half year drops. They're doing them, especially with all the cloud-based, it could be hourly, daily, that things are upgrading and being advanced. So that's really something that needs to be taken into consideration in the buying cycle.
I've heard one of the criticisms of Cisco was, though, the fact that they still run 2 dashboards between Meraki and Catalyst Center. But as we saw at Cisco Live, they announced AI Canvas,
right,
which is their overlay to that. In fact, they're trying to redefine AI operations.
Correct.
And that there's not one mention of that in this document, because again, it was created before that, right? And so again, how does a customer even understand that what AI Canvas even exists if you're looking at the MQ for information?
Yeah, or they're going to have to wait until next June potentially to find out the impact of what that is and so forth. So yeah, like I said, it's certainly a thing. I think, again, it's an important tool, but it's only should be one tool of part of the process. And that, like organizations do when you're looking to pick a stock, you're not just looking backward, you're also looking at what the forward guidance is as well. And so I think it's really important for organizations to leverage this as a point in time, right? And again, takes nothing away from those who are still in the upper, like there's a reason they're there from past.
Yeah.
But you also have to make a decision going forward. And a lot of these people going forward are talking about agentic and things like that they're going to be doing and so forth. But I think, again, it's interesting to have a conversation about it, right? And again, it doesn't take anything away from all the hard work that they put in. And let's also be fair. Some of the delay is also not caused by the analysts, but by the vendors challenging the position they were put in and so forth, which can also delay that. But it's still a point in time, and it needs.
Yeah, but that furthers my point. So if the vendor's got an issue with where they are and they provide updated information, why isn't that reflected in the quadrant?
Yeah.
Right.
Because then they'd have to give everyone an opportunity to update, and then it.
Sure, but if the goal is to be accurate, like the goal of every research firm is to be accurate, right? You and I try and be as accurate as we can. Sometimes you are, sometimes, you know, you make mistakes, but you got to be able to fix those things, especially for a document that has become the gold standard for decision tools.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, Extreme is another one where they got criticized, I think, for being a little bit behind in AI. But as we saw Connect with Platform One, they've actually made a lot of progress in that space. And so there's another case where they were a leader. They announced a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
Including their platform, including, you know, AI ops. And then they got taken out of it. And so I could, like, if they didn't have them as a leader before, I can understand them maybe holding pat to see how the new products do. But you can't be a leader, advance your product, and then get removed. To me, that's just very counter. It doesn't pass the eyeball test.
Yeah. No, there's certainly, like I said, this was certainly one that that was a little bit questioned about some of the things. It was on the bright side. It was cool to see Nile and Meter jump in to the Visionary, right? These are two companies that have been really working really diligently over the last couple of years to, you know, especially in this category, helping to simplify the operation in these campus environments and so forth. So, you know, congratulations to.
No, in fact, I think they're the classic definition of a visionary.
Correct.
They're trying to redefine the market. They're trying to move it to more of an as a service model, right? And that I think is where your vision comes from. I was also happy to see Arista continue to move up. I question Arista's low ability to execute.
Yeah.
Just from a stock perspective, I mean, Arista's an execution machine.
They are.
Right? There's nothing. There's no market they've ever decided to go after that they haven't crushed, right? And so, you know, I expect them to be, if they continue on with this, I'd expect them to be a leader next year.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly got the whole complete end-to-end package now, and obviously, again, we talk about recent events. Their recent acquisition of VeloCloud gives them a spot in the SD-WAN and in the SASE space now as well, a firm threshold there, right? So they have certainly been able. Yeah, I agree. They are a company that have been able to execute. They did jump over more from the vision standpoint this year, and a lot of that's probably due to some of the things that they announced last year. But again, they continue to evolve that model. They continue to build out that end-to-end operating system across the entire platform. So all of that's good to see. And like I said, they are inching closer to that leader quadrant and driving more of that competition in the space, which is always great. I mean, ultimately, all of this is awesome for the end users. The more people that are driving into that leader space and have that capability to have that vision and the ability to execute is only going to be goodness for the end user.
Oh yeah, no, it's good for the customers. It also underscored to me how many irrelevant vendors there are now. When I look at TP-Link, Ally, Telesis, Joint Digital, H3, like what I didn't think. Who uses these vendors? You know, CommScope's got some pretty interesting wireless stuff from Ruckus, and I think ALE's Fabric, very similar to Extreme's Fabric, I think is worth a look for certain companies. But again, that wasn't really reflected in the quadrant at all. So, you know, that's why I question the relevancy of it sometimes when there's some obvious things to me that don't pass the eyeball test. The Cisco one in particular, I'll tell you, I know the vendors in the leader quadrant are jumping for joy when Cisco ever gets moved out of it, right? But I had two executives from two companies in the leader quadrant both say to me that, in their opinion, when you got a vendor that's half the market, in fact, one of the people compared it to pickup trucks with Ford F-150.
Yep.
If you're selling if the buyers out there, half of them are buying Cisco, they're a leader.
Yeah.
Right. Just by definition, you may not like them, you may not like their strategy, but the buyers have spoken, right? That you know,
the RAV4 just beat out the F-150, so the F-150 is no longer a leader.
Yeah,
they're relegated to challenger status because they've outsold.
I think it hurts the credibility of the board. I would rather, if I were Juniper, I would rather have Cisco be a leader and us be higher up in the quadrant. Yes.
Yeah, and if you look, they're actually pulling away.
Yeah.
Right. So they're actually.
If you compare them to last year, they move further up, further right.
Yes.
And I think from a Juniper standpoint, it almost would have been more advantageous to have him as a leader and show, look, you know, we'll tip our cap to him, but we're pulling away.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's a lot about the wireless LAN.
Yeah.
There's been other quadrants that have come out. Should we
Yeah.
expand? What would you like to go next?
Let's talk about the maybe the SD, or let's talk about the data center one that came out last year. That was another interesting one where, again, when you look at the leaders, Arista, Cisco, those are the two, both well-deserving of being leaders. You know, Arista in particular has cut their teeth in data center. Nobody does hyperscaler like them.
Correct.
Again, we see Huawei as a leader, highest on the vision scale.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand. The real two vendors that I thought were out of place were, and all my comments for Huawei hold true here as well, were NVIDIA and Dell.
Okay. Yeah.
For Dell to be considered a visionary, what was the last visionary thing Dell did? Dell does a lot of things really well, right? They've got a better supply chain than anybody. They can bring costs down. I mean, they have figured out how to monetize the legacy better than anybody. Their whole networking strategy is based on other vendors.
Yeah, I think, they do have, I will say this, they have tried to come out with a lot more from the data center side, high performance data center switching. And so I think what you're seeing in this year is you're starting to see some of that pull from the AI factories for a company like Dell, a company like HPE, where they're attaching to the NVIDIA GPUs and those back-end networks, potentially for cloud providers, service providers, and enterprises. So I think we've seen all of those get some lift. And I think that's why you're seeing in particular Arista at the high end of that from ability to execute. Because as you remember, we went to their analyst, when was it? Was it 2 years ago in the fall? When they said, we're gonna jump on this AI thing, we're gonna be known, or at least last fall, whenever it was. And they said, we're gonna do, I don't know how much was it, $1 billion, $750 million of it or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they very early on addressed it. Hey, we're gonna, from a data center perspective, we're gonna really latch on to this AI thing. And they've ridden that wave. And so maybe what you're seeing with Dell, even with HPE again, is that rising tide of a factory, AI factory.
Well, so if that was the case, then NVIDIA would be a leader, right? But what I was told was, the way it was explained to me was that Gartner kind of weighted traditional data centers more than AI data centers.
Okay.
Right? And so that's where NVIDIA's strength is.
So if that's the case, my logic goes out the window.
Yeah. And, so it says here in the strengths for NVIDIA, this portfolio is well aligned with the needs of enterprise deploying performance stringent workloads, including AI Ethernet fabrics, right? And then one of the cautions is they have limited focus in traditional data centers, which again is fine, but I think, is there a data center being built today that isn't an AI data center?
Well, I think, it's a good question, or where AI will play a role in it as well, right? So, I mean, certainly there's a lot of mega data centers going in and so forth, right? And all the, the clusters and so forth going in. The other question for that is, does NVIDIA get any credit for InfiniBand? Or is it only is this data center just based on Ethernet?
Well, both. They didn't really mention InfiniBand. They did say through the vendor's roadmap and planned innovations are well aligned with the needs of customers deploying AI workloads in their data center. So that to me, from the research we've done, is almost every company out there. And so for NVIDIA to be kind of middle of the pack on ability to execute at a $4 trillion market cap, you could argue there's no better execution company than NVIDIA today. Yeah. And below the line on vision, and to me, just, I don't know, I would question the whole quadrant based on NVIDIA's positioning on this one. So, and then to see Dell and even Nokia, like, why is Nokia visionary? I know they're trying to kind of rebuild that data center business, but when was the last time anybody asked you about Nokia as a data center?
Yeah. It's been, I don't think I've had anyone in the last 6 months to a year, if not longer, ask me about it. It is interesting. You see, obviously, Extreme is in there, but more as a niche player. And it's funny even to see HPE as high as they are. And I have to wonder, I guess the question would also be how much of this is them passing through NVIDIA gear versus delivering their own, because last time I checked, HPE had a top of rack switch for their data center, which is not going to be too great. So I guess they're looking at it from a sales point of view, even if it's passed through NVIDIA gear that they're selling.
Yeah, but does that make you a leader though?
Well, they're not in the leaders, right? They're
does that even make you challenge?
it's their ability to execute, right?
Yeah.
So it's them leveraging their global platform and then potentially passing through that NVIDIA technology, in which case you would think NVIDIA would be a little bit higher as well, right? Because their partners are helping them execute.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right. I mean, they are the partner's choice. I mean, people build their architectures around NVIDIA for data center architecture, and so
correct.
Yeah, to me, that I don't know that
except for like an Arista, you could argue, right, where they're gonna leverage their own.
Well, Arista was at GTC this year, so I was,
there you go.
That we'll just leave it at that, I suppose.
Yeah.
The other one that I saw recently, and this one just came out, was the SASE platform one.
Okay.
And again, you look at Palo, Netscope, for that, well-deserving.
Yep.
Cato's up there. Yep. Cato claims to have invented the space. I don't think Cato's business, by their own admission, isn't all that big. So I think to be a leader, you have to have a certain element of size. I think Cato is a great challenger or even visionary.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would have put him as a leader, but we'll give him that. Zscaler to me was the really interesting one of this, only because they're listed as a visionary. I would argue that they're more challenger, because I do think their ability to execute is very high. And this comes down to your fundamental belief of what SASE is. And so they get a very strong SSE stack, right? They were kind of one of the no offense to Cato, but I think Zscaler actually invented SSE. But where they got dinged was their lack of SD-WAN.
Right.
Now, and that is purposeful. When I've talked to Zscaler about this, they don't believe that SD-WAN is the right way to deploy a network.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to go down this whole path of the cafe-like architecture, where when you work at home, you attach to the internet, you have everything secured for the Zscaler cloud.
Yeah.
Why do I then have to build a WAN, especially if I'm like a highly distributed company, like, a retailer, insurance company, law firm, things like that? Why can't I just maintain that same model wherever I go? So from a Zscaler definition, SD-WAN needs to evolve into this. So if Gartner disagrees with that sentiment and says, no, traditional SD-WANs are here to stay, fine, right? But I at least think they should have gotten some recognition for the disruption they're trying to cause, which is why I would think of them more as a challenger, right? They're trying to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, no, I think those are a lot of good points. I mean, it was interesting this year. I think Versa and Cisco fell back. They're in the challenger. I don't know if they fell back to or where they were the year before, but obviously, it's interesting to see Cisco. They're one of the largest security companies in the world.
That's another one. In fact, Cisco kind of dominates the WAN.
Yeah.
I'm assuming if you look at the narrative on Cisco, the cautions are they say customer experience and the marketing strategy being below average and things like that. But there's no question that there's more Cisco WANs out there than any other vendor, maybe every other vendor combined.
Yeah.
Right. And so, should they be a leader? I do know G2 is busy. This is another one where next year I expect them to fully move into that leader quadrant as he builds out that integrated roadmap. And so, so that's, they're another one. I was surprised to not see them be a leader given their history in WAN.
Yeah. And then you have HPE, which is getting dinged a little bit, but they're right. They've got a lot of their stuff going on with, obviously they've had integration that's going to be going on now, but they had their Axis technology that they bought in. And so they're still in the process of integrating their SD-WAN and their security.
But below Checkpoint, come on. I think like they're certainly stronger than Checkpoint, right? And so again, we need to look at the criteria and the way they got scored. But HP should be above Checkpoint. If you want to, I don't really think of them as niche. I think given the scale they have, right, they should at least be in the challenger category. So that's I guess that's Neil McDonald and team made that decision. So
well, like I said, if not anything else, they give us a good talking point. Have a discussion about and bring together. And the other interesting part about SASE, and this is all of the SASE as a platform, is the fact that there are so many different components of SASE that very few organizations are actually ripping and replacing the entire going with that whole platform approach. They might buy into it. I've always likened this to selling the book and delivering the chapters.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to replace our SD-WAN, but we eventually want to get to a SASE roadmap. But we're really happy with our vendors for this, this, and this. Maybe next we'll augment this piece of it and that piece of it. And I've heard that consistently when I go out and talk to a lot of the vendors that are on here. It's not so much of coming in and sweeping the floor and replacing everything, but gaining entry somewhere and then slowly expanding to build out the platform.
Yeah, and kudos to Netscope. I think they really came up in this, and they were another company that was really a niche SSE vendor, but for them to strengthen their SD-WAN offering enough to be able to get into the, I know they also get good Pure Insight reviews and things like that. So they're I'd like to see them go public just to get a better look at their financials, how big they are and how their growth is. But for them, because this evolved, I think, from the older SD-WAN MQ, but it was certainly a good showing for them.
Yeah.
And the one vendor that dropped out of here is VMware, right? So they had a single vendor set, kind of.
Yeah.
With Symantec, but obviously with Broadcom divesting that, they got moved out. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. When did the SASE come out? When's that as of? That wasn't before they divested, though, was it?
It says July 9th, 2025. So.
Okay. Well, that's when it was released, right? But that was when the report was released, but the data would have been even earlier than that.
It would have been, yeah. So
that's interesting. So we'll see if by next year that Arista shows up on here.
Well, they should, right? I mean, so if there's one thing Arista does, it integrates pretty quickly. So looking forward to that. So, but I think the main theme is here, if you're a buyer, it's okay to use these as a guide, but you got to understand that when these things come out, just based on publishing timelines, it's likely the data is out of date.
Yeah.
Right. And you got to do your own homework and make sure you do your own evaluations, follow the news yourself,
right.
Or even ask the Gartner analysts what's been updated since then, because I can guarantee in every one of these cases, even the July 9th one, there have been updates to the products since then. One of the things that you brought up is with AI being used now to create code, the whole concept of release cycles is going away. These vendors are innovating faster than I've ever seen, right? Here's G2's quote, right? Cisco is unrecognizable as a company. I mean, you could say that for many of the vendors in this space. They're rolling out new products and new features just at a pace that we've never seen before.
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's okay to leverage these as starting points, but make sure you do some due diligence, right? Talk to the vendors you're interested in and find out what their roadmap and their recent releases are as well, just so you're well informed. Because again, these aren't decisions you make that you're replacing 6 months, a year down the road. When you're buying this network gear, it's in there for years. And in some cases more than a dozen years.
Yeah.
So it really behooves you to be able to, again, leverage this, but also make sure you're doing your own research.
And I think to call it to Gartner, you really got to rethink this process. Putting up PDFs in an all digital world to me seems just so archaic. In fact, maybe we should do like an MQ on decision tools and try to figure out which ones are most timely and things like that. I don't think Gartner would fare very well on that, though.
Yeah, that would be it.
Although they are the market leaders, so they'd have to be a leader.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. Well, listen, we've spent a lot of time going through this. Hopefully it's been valuable to all of you out there as well. Thank you for joining us on this Analyst Angle and Zcast with my co-host here, Zeus Kerravala. And so enjoy the rest of the summer. Enjoy this, and we'll see you again soon.